We're joined now by author and historian Niall Ferguson. He's got a new book out, The Great Degeneration, How Institutions Decay and Economies Die. Professor Ferguson, thanks for being here.
Nice to be here.
So the last time I interviewed you, which was recently, you were quite bullish on the U.S. long-term, 20, 30, 40 years out. Now your book is The Great Degeneration, all about the decline of the West. What happened?
Well, the book is How to Fix It book. This is not a declinist book. What I'm saying is the reason that we're not growing faster, the reason that we're not creating jobs faster, isn't that we're not doing enough stimulus. It's much more institutional, it's much more structural, and we can fix these things. You know, we can fix the problems with our public finances, actually, despite what you might hear in Congress. We can fix the problem of crazy regulation, we can fix the problem of tort law, and we can also fix a fundamental problem, which is our education system, which is failing a lot of kids in America. These are all fixable problems, and we will grow faster if we fix them. Okay,
let's kind of chip away at them. So regulation is something that you write a lot about in this. The burdens of regulation to business. This is rhetoric that we often hear. What is the best evidence of the extent to which it's impacting business, though?
Well, I'm a historian, so let me give you a historian's answer. Let's look at the Federal Register, which is the book that contains the regulations that our 63 federal agencies and departments issue. It has grown massively since the 1930s. In fact, it's grown by a factor of 30 in terms of pages, if you exclude the blank pages, whereas the economy has only grown in real terms by a factor of 12. So we're clearly much more regulated than we were in the past. And there really hasn't been a period when regulation has stopped growing except under Ronald Reagan. Under Reagan, regulation actually shrank. There was a significant deregulation, and the economy grew. In fact, the Federal Register shrinks by 30%, and the economy grows by 30%.
How do you know there's a correlation, though? Because other things are going on during that time, too. I mean, he was cutting taxes, upping military spending, and you're not drawing the line between those excessive regulations as demonstrated by the Federal Register and an impact on business.
So we actually know from the regulators themselves, from the government agencies, that regulation costs. And we can estimate that it costs about $1.8 trillion. So it is a bit like an invisible surcharge on all federal taxes of about 65%. And what's more, it weighs disproportionately on small business. It actually costs you per employee 30 to 40% more if you employ fewer than 20 people than if you employ more than 500. Now that matters because we know from any number of studies that it's smallish businesses that create jobs as they grow. And what we are not seeing in the economy right now is small and medium-sized enterprises hiring. They are deterred by regulation. I think they're also deterred by fiscal uncertainty. And here, you're right, it's not just regulation. I'm also talking about the fact that businesses say, you know, when I look at the path of fiscal policy, I'm going to be hit at some point by higher taxes. I mean, that is a no-brainer.
Well, so there you have it. There's fiscal certainty. You know you're going to be maybe hit by higher taxes and more dysfunction in Washington. Can't you just factor that in?
Well, I think we need to offer something slightly more specific than that. And at the moment, what we have is great uncertainty in the realm of fiscal policy. We have projections at over a 10-year time horizon. Everybody says, oh, the deficit's not so big, things are fine. But actually, if you look beyond that 10-year time horizon, there are enormous problems in the future. The unfunded liabilities of Medicare being number one, and then you have Social Security and Medicaid. All this stuff is off balance sheet. Now, you don't have to be a Nobel laureate to know that in the future generations either will be paying substantially higher taxes or their entitlements will be much less generous than the baby boomers.
You don't have to be a Nobel laureate to know that?
Well, I think most small businesses know it. They sense that the problems of the federal government are much larger than the official debt number or the official deficit number says. And so I think reasonably people say, you know what, I suspect this environment is going to get more hostile in terms of taxes. And by the way, the last election was fought partly on the question of whether you were going to bring down federal spending to the tax level or raise taxes in order to keep federal spending at roughly the level it's at. And you know, the proponent of higher taxes won for all kinds of reasons, but that sent a signal. And we still don't quite know what form it's going to take. But one thing's for sure, the taxes will not be borne exclusively by the 1% trying to tax the super rich just leads them to hire new accountants and send their money elsewhere. So I think that the guy in the middle or the lady in the middle running the small business feels reasonably uncertain about fiscal policy, really hampered by regulation. And a third point that I make in the book, there's this problem which is quite specifically American of tort law, where you suddenly find yourself on the wrong end of litigation. Aggressive lawyers will come after you. A favourite example is Southwest Airlines suddenly being sued for their free drink vouchers in business class.
Of course, you talk about the rule of lawyers, not of law. Before we go, we have very little time, but what would be the one thing that could change some of these drivers that you're talking about? Would it be getting money out of politics? Because you talk about how much lawyers and lobbyists benefit from all of this.
It's certainly, we need to clean up Washington. Crony capitalism is flourishing in Washington, D.C. And the nexus between the lobbyists and the lawyers, including the lawyers who are actually in Congress writing this crazy legislation, we have to break that. Now, there's no quick fix. You can't just wave a magic wand and take money out of politics. But I think we need to address the issue of how our legislation and our regulation gets written, because right now it's written by special interests.
Niall Ferguson, thank you so much.